The Valian Empire had traveled across the stars for 300 years. They had met more than 300 different species during their journey through space. Each time they found a new species, they studied them carefully and wrote down everything about them in their records. The Valian had a simple way of dealing with others. If a species was peaceful, they would offer trade and friendship. If a species was dangerous, they would use their powerful military to force them into submission. When the Valian scout ships found Earth, they thought it would be just another easy addition to their growing empire. The planet was the third one circling a normal yellow star. Nothing special about it at all. The creatures living there called themselves humans. The Valian watched the humans from space for several weeks, studying their behavior and culture. What they saw made them confident. These humans had art and music. They built families and lived in large communities. They seemed to care about each other. Everything about them looked peaceful. Commander Zelthar stood on the bridge of his ship, the Infinite Reach. He was tall, with blue armor covering his body. His face had mandibles that clicked when he talked, and he had 3 eyes that could see many things at once. Beside him stood Prin, his second in command. She was smaller, but just as experienced. Her job was to study the species they encountered and tell Zelthar what they should do. Prin looked at her screen and began reading her report. Her voice was calm and professional. She had done this many times before. The data showed that humans were a prey species, nothing to worry about. They had eyes in the front of their heads, which meant their ancient ancestors might have been hunters long ago, but their modern civilization showed all the signs of prey behavior. They formed huge cooperative groups. They had warning systems to alert each other of danger. Most importantly, they tried to avoid fighting whenever they could. Zelthar asked about their food needs. Prin explained that humans ate both plants and animals, but they grew their food in farms and factories now. There was no sign that they still hunted for survival. When Zelthar asked about the threat level, Prin said it was very low. The humans had some nuclear weapons and basic rockets that could reach space, but their world was divided into many different countries that often disagreed with each other. The Valian had a standard way of handling species like this. They would park their fleet in orbit, make contact with the leaders, and offer membership in the Empire. The humans would accept within a few days. This approach had worked perfectly 87 times in the past. The Valian fleet arrived at Earth in a display meant to impress and intimidate. 15 enormous warships appeared out of nowhere, each one stretching 3 kilometers from front to back. They arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern above the planet. Within minutes, they began broadcasting a message to everyone below. The message went out in every human language at the same time. Deep inside a military base in North America, alarms started ringing. General Kevin Brooks was in charge of the command center. He was an older man with gray hair and a face marked by years of hard decisions. He stood watching the screens as the alien ships appeared in orbit. His voice was quiet but firm when he spoke. He told his staff to contact the president immediately. He also wanted linguists, people who studied languages ready to help communicate. Humanity was about to learn if they were truly alone in the universe. A young lieutenant named Amy Carter sat at a communications station. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she tried to understand what was happening. The aliens were broadcasting on every radio frequency, every television channel, every form of communication humans used. She told the general that the message was coming in all languages at once. English, Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, and hundreds of others, all at the same time. General Brooks ordered her to play the message for everyone to hear. A voice filled the command center. It sounded artificial, like a computer talking. There was no emotion in it at all. The voice announced that they were the Valian Empire. They had come to offer Earth a place among the civilized species of the galaxy. The message was not a request. It was a command. Humans would open diplomatic channels immediately. They would follow integration protocols. Resistance would not be wise. The Valian had already evaluated and categorized humanity. They would begin the formal process in 72 hours. The message kept repeating over and over. All around the world, people stopped what they were doing. They watched their televisions and stared at their phones in shock and disbelief. Aliens were real. They were here. And they were not asking permission. In government buildings, leaders called emergency meetings. At military bases, soldiers rushed to their posts. Everyone wondered the same thing. What would happen next? In Seattle, a graduate student named Peter Hayes sat in his small apartment. He was studying to become an anthropologist, someone who studies human behavior and history. His specialty was human conflict and war. He had spent years reading about every battle, every war, every fight in human history. As he listened to the alien message repeat, his hands began to shake. Something about the way the aliens talked made him very nervous. Peter spoke quietly to himself. The aliens had evaluated humans. They thought they knew what humans were. His roommate Claire sat next to him on the couch. She was studying medicine, learning to become a doctor. She suggested that maybe the aliens were right. They were more advanced. Maybe humans should listen to them and do what they said. Peter shook his head. He told Claire to listen to the message carefully. The aliens were not asking for anything. They were telling humans what to do. They had done this before, probably many times. They thought humans would just surrender because the alien ships were bigger and more powerful. Claire asked what choice humans had. They could not fight technology that advanced. Peter did not answer right away. Instead, he opened his laptop and started pulling up files. He showed Claire images and documents from human history, wars that lasted for years, battles where humans refused to give up even when defeat seemed certain, genocides where people fought back against impossible odds, survivals where humans endured conditions that should have killed them. After looking at all this information, Peter finally spoke. He said the aliens had categorized humans as prey animals, but they had not looked deep enough into human nature. Humans were not prey. They never had been. The same conversation was happening in homes all over the world. Some people thought humanity should surrender immediately. Any species that could travel between stars must have weapons and technology that humans could never match. Fighting would be suicide. Other people said humanity should never bow to tyrants and bullies. Humans had fought for freedom throughout their entire history. They should not stop now just because the enemy came from space. World leaders gathered in video conferences. President Richard Cole of the United States sat at a large table. Around him were military generals, cabinet members, and advisors from every important agency. The room was tense. Everyone knew that the decisions made in the next few hours would determine the future of the entire human race. President Cole spoke one word: options. He wanted to know what humanity could do. General Brooks spoke first. He said they needed to be realistic. The alien ships had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. The nuclear arsenal might damage the ships, but it would also start a war that humanity could not win. Janet Murphy was the Secretary of Defense. She asked an important question. What if humans did not start the war? What if the aliens had already decided to attack? That message was not an invitation to talk. It was a demand for surrender. Another advisor named Henry Foster was the president's chief science expert. He said he had been studying the alien message carefully. The way they talked, the words they used. Everything suggested they had done this many times before. They had a script. They arrived, they scared everyone, and species gave up without a fight. It was a pattern. President Cole asked what they should do. Foster suggested stalling for time. Open communication with the aliens and pretend to cooperate. This would give humanity time to study the aliens and figure out their weaknesses. He also recommended preparing for war, just in case diplomacy failed. President Cole looked at everyone in the room. He saw fear in their faces, but he also saw determination. He made his decision. Humanity would not surrender. But they would not attack first either. He ordered his staff to open a communication channel with the alien fleet. It was time to talk. On the Valthene command ship, Zelthar received a message. The humans wanted to talk. He settled into his command chair, completely confident. This would go exactly like every other first contact. The pattern never changed. The human leader appeared on his screen. He was an older male with gray hair. He wore formal clothes. Behind him stood other humans in military uniforms and business suits. The human introduced himself as President Richard Cole. He said he was speaking for all of Earth. They had received the message from the Valthene. Zelthar's translator changed his words into the human language. He thanked the president for his compliance. He said the Valthene would send diplomats down to Earth within 24 hours to begin the integration process. Cole's face did not change expression. The Valthene diplomatic shuttle came down through Earth's atmosphere like a silver teardrop falling from the sky. 24 hours had passed since Commander Zelthar's ultimatum. The humans had prepared a landing site near New York City as requested. From space, everything looked normal. The Valthene saw this as a good sign. The humans were cooperating. Ambassador Kyrath sat inside the shuttle reviewing his briefing materials one last time. He was a senior diplomat who had overseen 43 successful integrations. He knew exactly how this day would go. The humans would meet with him. They would ask questions. He would explain the benefits of joining the Empire. By the end of the day, documents would be signed. Another species would join the Valthene Empire. Simple and routine. What Ambassador Kyrath did not know was that in underground bunkers across the planet, humanity was preparing for something very different. Deep beneath the Pentagon in a secret laboratory, Dr. Lisa Chang stared at her computer screen. Her eyes were red and bloodshot. She had not slept for 2 days. Around her, a team of cyber warfare experts analyzed every piece of data the aliens had transmitted. These were the best hackers and codebreakers on the planet. They were looking for weaknesses. Lieutenant Marcus Webb worked at a nearby station. He was young but brilliant. He had broken some of the most secure codes in the world. Now he was working on alien technology. Suddenly he sat up straight and called out to Lisa. He had found something interesting. The alien communication systems had a vulnerability. It was not a big one, but it was there. If humans could get close enough to one of the alien ships, they might be able to inject a virus into their computer network. Lisa asked what they needed to make it work. Marcus explained that they needed to be within about 100 meters of an alien ship. They also needed to broadcast on a very specific radio frequency. Lisa thought for a moment. The shuttle landing today would be their chance. It would be the closest humans could get to Valthene technology. She started making preparations. In orbit above Earth, Commander Zelthar monitored the diplomatic mission with routine interest. Ambassador Kyrath's shuttle was approaching the landing site. Sensors showed thousands of humans gathered to watch the arrival. This was perfect. A large audience would help show the Valthene power and make integration easier. Suddenly, Corvin, the tactical officer, straightened at his console. He was young and still learning his job. He reported unusual electromagnetic activity on the planet's surface. It was coming from multiple locations around the world. Zelthar asked him to explain what he meant. Corvin said that human military bases were powering up their weapons, all over the planet at the same time. There was also a lot of encrypted communication between human nations. More than normal. Zelthar's mandibles tightened with concern. He asked if the humans were preparing to attack the shuttle. Corvin said he did not know, but this level of coordination was very unusual for a prey species during first contact. Most prey species were too frightened or too disorganized to coordinate like this. Zelthar considered ordering the shuttle to abort the landing and return to orbit. But he decided against it. The humans had primitive weapons. Nothing they had could threaten Valthene's shield technology. If the humans tried anything violent, it would just give the Valthene an excuse to use force earlier than planned. Zelthar ordered his fleet to maintain alert status, but he allowed the diplomatic mission to proceed as planned. If the humans attacked, the Valthene would respond appropriately. The shuttle touched down in Central Park with perfect precision. Its landing struts extended smoothly. A large crowd of carefully selected people watched from behind barriers. There were diplomats from many nations, world leaders, and media with cameras. Everyone wanted to see the aliens up close. A ramp extended from the side of the shuttle with a soft hiss of hydraulics. Ambassador Kyrath emerged from the shuttle. He was flanked by 2 guards wearing ceremonial armor. Kyrath was very tall even for a Valthene. His body was covered in deep blue armor that showed his high rank. He had 4 arms all moving in a gesture of greeting. His translator chip converted his words into multiple human languages at the same time. He announced that he came bearing the gift of civilization and the protection of the great Valthene Empire. President Cole stepped forward from the human delegation. He extended his hand in the traditional human greeting. Kyrath looked at the hand with curiosity. After a moment, he extended one of his own hands to grasp it. The touch was brief and formal. Cole welcomed Kyrath to Earth and said they had much to discuss. Kyrath agreed and asked if they could move to a better location for signing the integration documents. President Cole's expression remained neutral and calm. He said there had been a misunderstanding. Humanity was not prepared to join the Valthene Empire. Humans were a sovereign species. They intended to remain that way. A wave of tension moved through the Valthene guards. They stood straighter, their hands moving closer to their weapons. Kyrath's translator took a moment to process what Cole had said. It seemed like the machine could not believe the translation was correct. Kyrath spoke slowly and carefully. He suggested that perhaps the human translation devices were broken. Species did not refuse integration into the Empire. The benefits were obvious. The alternative was isolation from all galactic society. Cole replied simply that humanity would accept isolation over slavery. On the command ship in orbit, Zelthar rose quickly from his throne. His staff reported what the human leader was saying. The humans were refusing integration. This had never happened before. Zelthar could not believe what he was hearing. Zelthar ordered Ambassador Kyrath to make the consequences of refusal very clear to the humans. They needed to understand what would happen if they did not cooperate. In Central Park, Kyrath's friendly diplomatic manner disappeared. It was replaced by cold authority. He told President Cole that humans appeared to misunderstand their situation. The Valian Empire had assessed humanity. Humans lacked the capability to defend themselves against galactic threats. They lacked the technology to survive alone in space. Integration was not optional. It was required. Cole said that humanity would learn those capabilities on their own. He asked Kyrath and his guards to return to their shuttle. Earth's answer was no. The humans would not join the Empire. The Valian guards moved their hands toward their weapons. All around the park, human security personnel raised their own guns in response. The crowd of onlookers scattered, diving behind barriers and running for cover. Kyrath gave one final warning. His voice was ice cold. He told Cole to comply or face the consequences. Cole did not move or show any fear. He told the aliens to leave immediately. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. The Valian guards drew their energy weapons. These were plasma projectors that could vaporize a human instantly. But before they could fire, a sniper bullet traveling faster than sound hit the first guard's weapon. The weapon shattered into pieces. A second bullet hit the other guard's weapon a fraction of a second later. Both guards stumbled backward in confusion. Humans should not be that fast. They should not be that accurate. At the exact same moment, a pulse of electromagnetic energy washed over the shuttle. This was Dr. Lisa Chang's virus. It had been transmitted from hidden equipment positioned carefully around the landing site. The virus slipped through the Valian communication systems like water through a crack. Within seconds, it was embedded deep in the shuttle's computer network. Kyrath's translator chip suddenly went silent. The guards' armor locked up. Their servo motors stopped responding correctly. The shuttle's engines began making strange noises as conflicting commands flooded its control systems. Kyrath demanded to know what was happening. But his words came out in his own language. The translator was not working. The humans could not understand him. General Kevin Brooks stepped out from behind the security line. He had a radio in his hand. He spoke calmly into it using a code phrase. In the Pentagon laboratory, Lisa Chang watched her computer screens as the virus spread through the shuttle's network like wildfire. She confirmed to the general that the virus upload was successful, but she also reported something else. Something important. The shuttle's communication system was connected to the main fleet's network. The shuttles acted as relay points. By hacking the shuttle, they had just gained access to the entire Valian orbital command structure. General Brooks allowed himself a small smile. He looked at Ambassador Kyrath and told him to call his commander. He should tell Zelthar that Earth's answer had not changed. Humanity would not surrender. In orbit, the Valian command deck descended into chaos. Every console was showing warning messages. Systems were rebooting randomly without commands. The communication network was flooded with meaningless data. Nothing was working correctly. Commander Zelthar roared for a report. Corvin's voice was shaking when he answered. They had been compromised by a digital intrusion. It had originated from the planet's surface. The virus had entered through the diplomatic shuttle and spread through the entire fleet network. It was in everything. Sensors, weapons, life support, communications. The technical teams were purging the infected systems, but the virus had already accessed everything. Prin looked up from her station. The standoff lasted 18 hours. The Valian diplomatic shuttle remained stuck in Central Park, surrounded by human soldiers and cut off from the fleet above. In orbit, Commander Zelthar tried repeatedly to contact the shuttle. Every attempt was blocked by sophisticated jamming technology that should not exist on such a primitive world. During those 18 hours, neither side backed down. But both sides prepared for war. In a secure bunker deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Kevin Brooks coordinated with military leaders from every major nation on Earth. The screen in front of him showed a tactical map of the Valthene fleet positions. Red zones marked their weapons ranges. Blue areas showed where their bombardment would strike first. It was not encouraging data. Colonel Janet Price was the operations coordinator. She reported that Chinese satellites were being targeted by Valthene weapons. The Russian military was reporting the same thing. The aliens were preparing to blind humanity's eyes in space before they attacked. Brooks said this was expected behavior. He asked about the status of Operation Perimeter. Price confirmed that all assets were in position. Every nation with launch capability had synchronized their systems. The moment the Valthene fired their first shot, humanity would respond with everything they had. Every weapon, every missile, every desperate measure. Brooks nodded grimly. It would not be enough. Even with every nuclear weapon, every missile, every experimental energy weapon that humanity possessed, they might damage a few alien ships. But 15 enormous warships, each 3 kilometers long and equipped with technology centuries beyond human capability, would devastate Earth before they fell. If they fell at all. Brooks called up a video feed from the Pentagon Cyber Warfare Laboratory. Dr. Lisa Chang looked exhausted beyond measure, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. Brooks asked if she had anything useful from the shuttle's systems. Lisa said they had mapped the entire Valthene network architecture, and they had found something very interesting. The Valthene did not separate their systems the way humans did. Humans kept their weapon systems isolated from communications, which were separate from life support. But the Valthene had one integrated network connecting everything across their entire fleet. This made their communication very efficient. But it also meant that if humans could crack their encryption, they could access everything at once. Every ship, every system. Simultaneously, Brooks asked if she could crack the encryption. Lisa said they were working on it around the clock. But even if they succeeded, she was not sure what they could accomplish. They might disrupt Valthene systems temporarily, but the aliens would eventually purge the virus and regain control. Lisa said what humanity really needed was a way to make the Valthene think twice about attacking Earth in the first place. In his apartment, Peter Hayes had not slept in 2 days either. His coffee had gone cold many hours ago, but he kept drinking it mechanically while he worked. Claire had given up trying to convince him to rest. Instead, she helped him organize his research data. Peter kept muttering to himself. There had to be something, some pattern, some weakness. The Valthene had done this integration process 300 times. There had to be a reason it always worked. There had to be something humans could exploit. Claire suggested gently that maybe the integration worked because the species the Valthene encountered really were prey species. Maybe humans were the unusual ones, the outliers. Peter shook his head firmly. He pulled up everything humans had learned about Valthene biology and culture from the transmissions. He studied their evolution, their society structure, everything. He said the Valthene were not apex predators either. Looking at their anatomy and behavior, they were opportunistic. They probably evolved as scavengers. They would wait until something was wounded or weak. Then they would move in and take advantage. Peter pulled up detailed analysis of Valthene physical structure based on the images captured in Central Park. He pointed at the screen excitedly. "Look at this," he told Claire. Their sensory organs were designed for detecting vulnerability. They could sense fear. They could detect stress hormones in other species. They could identify uncertainty. That was how they picked their targets for integration. They would scan a species and detect all the biological markers of prey behavior. Then they would move in confidently. It was not about physical strength or military power. It was about psychology, mental warfare. Claire leaned closer to look at the data. She asked what would happen when the Valthene encountered a species that did not show those fear markers. Peter said quietly that they were about to find out. He grabbed his phone and said he needed to contact someone at the State Department immediately. This information needed to reach President Cole as fast as possible. On the Valthene command ship, Zelthar reviewed the tactical analysis for the 50th time. Nothing made sense. Everything about this integration was completely wrong. Every assumption had been incorrect. Prin approached his command throne with obvious hesitation. She knew Zelthar was in a bad mood. But she had completed the behavioral analysis he had requested, based on the humans' response patterns, stress indicators in their communications, and their tactical choices during the standoff. She had to revise their initial assessment of humanity. Zelthar told her to continue. Prin explained that humans were not displaying prey behavior at all. When the Valthene issued their ultimatum, human cortisol levels should have spiked dramatically. Cortisol was the stress hormone that prey species produced when frightened. But instead of cortisol, sensors had detected an increase in adrenaline and norepinephrine in human transmissions. These were the hormones that predators produced when preparing to fight. When the Valthene landed their shuttle in Central Park, humans should have shown submission or flight responses. Instead, they had shown controlled aggression and precise tactical positioning. Prin brought up a comparative display on the screen. One side showed the response patterns of 47 prey species that the Valthene had successfully integrated. The other side showed human response patterns. The difference was stark and undeniable. Prin said the humans were not responding like prey defending themselves. They were responding like territorial predators defending their hunting range from an intruder. Zelthar studied the data carefully. His mandibles clicked in thought. He pointed out that predators could be subdued through superior force. The Valthene had done this before with other aggressive species. Prin agreed but said those previous cases were different. The aggressive species they had conquered before were solitary apex predators or small pack hunters. Maybe a dozen individuals working together at most. The humans were something completely different. They were pack hunters, yes, but they hunted in packs of thousands, millions even. Their entire global civilization was structured around coordinated violence when they felt threatened. Prin pulled up more data. This came from Earth's own internet. Historical footage of human conflicts, battles from their world wars, urban warfare, guerrilla campaigns, nuclear weapons detonating and creating mushroom clouds that rose into the sky. Prin said the humans had been fighting each other continuously throughout their recorded history. And this was the critical part that Zelthar needed to understand. They did not fight just for territory or food like normal predators. They fought for ideas, for beliefs, for abstract concepts that had no physical form. This was not normal survival behavior. This was something else entirely. Zelthar watched footage of human soldiers storming beaches under heavy weapons fire. He saw cities reduced to rubble. He saw weapons that could crack continents and boil oceans. He asked how the Valthene assessment team had missed all of this. Prin explained that they were looking at human current behavior. Modern humans lived peacefully with each other most of the time. They had art-culture cooperation. The Valthene had classified humans based on what they did during peace, not on what they were capable of during war. That had been their critical mistake. Before Zelthar could respond, alarms started blaring across the entire command deck. Red warning lights flashed. Corvin shouted from his tactical station. Multiple launches from the planet's surface. Hundreds of missiles. They were targeting the Valthene fleet. Zelthar immediately ordered defensive systems activated. He also ordered return fire on human military installations. This was it. The war was starting. But as Corvin tracked the missiles, something seemed wrong. The trajectories were not correct. These missiles were not on intercept courses with the Valthene ships. Instead, they were spreading out in all directions, creating a perimeter, surrounding the fleet. Corvin reported with confusion in his voice that the missiles were not attacking. They were positioning themselves. They were creating a shell around the Valthene fleet. On Earth in the Cheyenne Mountain bunker, General Brooks watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. All missiles were in position as planned. He spoke into his radio and asked for authorization to detonate. Colonel Price pointed out that this would create a debris field. The high-velocity fragments would make low orbit unusable for months. Maybe longer. Human satellites would be destroyed. The space station would be at risk. Everything in orbit would be endangered. Brooks said he understood the consequences. 6 months had passed since the Valthene withdrew from Earth's solar system. In that time, the planet had transformed completely. The knowledge that humanity was not alone in the universe had united the species in ways that decades of diplomacy had failed to achieve. The United Earth Coalition formed within just a few weeks. Nations that had been enemies for generations now pooled their resources together. Technology, military assets, and scientific knowledge all flowed into a single defensive structure. designed to protect humanity from future threats. But unity always came with a price. And that price was about to become clear. In Geneva, at the new coalition headquarters, President Richard Cole sat across a table from Commander Zelthar. After 3 months of careful back-channel communications, the Valthine had requested a formal dialogue. This time they were not issuing ultimatums. They wanted to negotiate. The meeting was awkward. Perhaps the most awkward diplomatic meeting in all of human history. Cole looked at the diplomatic brief that had taken weeks for translators to decipher properly. He said the Valian Empire was concerned. They believed humanity posed a threat to galactic stability. Zelthar's mandibles clicked in a gesture that humans had learned meant frustration or stress. He told Cole that he needed to understand the Valian perspective. In 300 years of expansion across the galaxy, the Empire had encountered perhaps 1 or 2 species classified as genuinely aggressive. Those species had been contained through military action and quarantine. But humanity was different. Human civilization was built entirely on controlled aggression. The Valian leadership did not know how to categorize Earth. They did not have a box to put humans in. Cole said he thought the Valian had decided humans were predators. Zelthar agreed, but said there was a problem with that classification. Predator species were not supposed to achieve spaceflight. They were supposed to destroy themselves first. Predators fought over resources, territory, and ideological differences. They fragmented into competing groups. They had extinction-level conflicts. Humans should have experienced at least 3 more global wars before reaching this technological level. How had humanity avoided destroying itself? Cole leaned back in his chair and considered the question carefully. He said humanity had come very close to self-destruction multiple times. But humans had learned slowly and painfully to redirect their aggressive instincts. Sports provided an outlet. Competition in business and science channeled aggression into productive areas. Exploration gave humans new frontiers to conquer. Humans had learned to channel what made them dangerous into things that made them better as a species. It was not a perfect system, but it worked most of the time. Zelthar repeated those last 3 words, most of the time. He asked what happened when it did not work. Cole admitted honestly that when the system failed, humans fought each other. Wars still happened. Conflicts still erupted. But usually humans fought each other, not other species. A human aide entered the room quickly and handed Cole a tablet computer. Cole's expression darkened as he read the information on the screen. He told Zelthar they had a more immediate problem than the Empire's philosophical concerns about humanity's nature. Cole turned the tablet to show Zelthar a star map. A section of space approximately 40 light-years from Earth was highlighted in red. 3 human colony ships were marked on the map. Cole explained that these ships had launched decades earlier, long before first contact with the Valian. The ships traveled at sublight speeds toward nearby star systems. They carried tens of thousands of colonists in cryogenic sleep. The colonists had left Earth seeking new homes among the stars. Cole continued explaining the problem. These colony ships were out of range for real-time communication. They would not know about first contact with the Valian for many years. But according to Valian star charts, 2 of the colony destinations were in systems that the Empire claimed as their territory. Zelthar's posture stiffened immediately. He said that was very unfortunate. Cole said it was more than unfortunate. It was a crisis waiting to happen. Those colonists were going to arrive expecting empty systems. If the Valian Empire tried to turn them away, or worse, if the colonists responded the same way Earth had 6 months ago, the situation could trigger the war that both sides were desperately trying to avoid. For a long moment, both leaders sat in heavy silence. The weight of potential disaster pressed down on them. Finally, Zelthar spoke. He said there might be a solution. The Valian High Council was divided on what to do about humanity. Some council members wanted containment. They wanted to quarantine Earth and prevent human expansion. Some wanted integration by force, proving that the Empire could not be defied. But there was a third faction. This group was led by High Counselor Ven. Ven believed that humanity could become valuable allies rather than subjects or enemies. Cole repeated the word carefully. Allies. He asked what that would actually look like in practice. Zelthar admitted it would be unprecedented in Valian history. The Empire had never formed an equal partnership with another species before. But Counselor Ven argued that humanity's unique capabilities could benefit the Empire greatly. Human skills in cyber warfare, Adaptive tactics and rapid technological development were impressive. In exchange for human cooperation, the Valthine could help guide human expansion into space. They could help prevent conflicts with other species. They could share technology and knowledge that would advance humanity by centuries. Cole said dryly that it sounded like the same deal as before, just with better marketing language. Zelthar insisted it was genuinely different. True allies meant equality. Humans would maintain complete sovereignty over their own systems. They would develop their own technology at their own pace. But the two species would share intelligence about galactic threats. They would coordinate on mutual defensive concerns. They would work together to prevent the kind of devastating conflict that would hurt both civilizations. Cole asked the critical question. What would happen when human and Valthine interest conflicted? When humans wanted to expand into space that the Valthine claimed? Zelthar said they would negotiate like civilized species should have done 6 months ago. Before his superiors had badly underestimated humanity. Before Cole could respond to this proposal, alarms began sounding throughout the coalition headquarters. The loud sirens made everyone jump. Cole's aide rushed back into the room. His face was pale with shock. He reported that they had a major situation developing. One of humanity's deep space monitoring stations had detected weapons fire. High-energy plasma signatures. The signals were coming from the direction of colony ship Endeavor. Cole was on his feet instantly. He demanded the status of the Endeavor. The aide said they did not know yet. The ship was too far away for real-time communication. Light-speed lag meant the information was hours old. But the energy signatures matched Valthine weapons exactly. Someone with Valthine technology was shooting at human colonists. Zelthar stood as well, accessing his own communication device urgently. He said this should not be possible. He had personally ordered a complete withdrawal of all Valthine forces from human regions of space. No Valthine ships should be anywhere near those colony ships, unless it was not an official fleet. Cole demanded an explanation immediately. Zeltar's expression grew dark. He said there were elements within the Empire who had opposed the withdrawal from Earth. Extremists who believed that prey species must be subjugated by force. If those extremists had learned about the human colony ships, they might have decided to take matters into their own hands. Zelthar said he needed to contact his fleet immediately. If rogue Valthine elements were attacking human civilians, this situation would spiral into exactly the war they were trying to prevent. Cole said grimly that it was already too late for prevention. The moment the rest of humanity learned that Valthine ships had attacked their colonists, every government on Earth would demand immediate retaliation. Public opinion would force leaders into war whether they wanted it or not. Cole told Zelthar he had maybe 6 hours before the political situation became impossible to control. In orbit around a distant planet, colony ship Endeavor drifted through space with massive holes torn through its hull. The ship had carried 12,000 colonists in cryogenic sleep. These were families who had left Earth 40 years earlier, seeking a fresh start on a new world. Captain Ellen Rogers had been awakened automatically when the ship took damage. Emergency protocols pulled her from cryosleep. She struggled to understand what had happened. Her command crew was scattered. Many were injured. Some were dead. Life support systems were failing throughout the ship. Through the viewport she could see 3 alien vessels. They matched the descriptions from the first contact reports that had been transmitted years ago. Valthine ships. But the reports had said the Valthine withdrew. So why were they attacking a civilian colony ship? Ellen broadcast on all frequencies. She identified herself as captain of the Earth colony ship Endeavor. She stated clearly that they were a civilian vessel carrying families. They were not armed. They were not a military threat. She requested that the aliens cease fire immediately and allow evacuation of the passengers. The response came in synthesized English, cold and emotionless. 3 weeks after the Endeavor massacre, a combined military fleet assembled at the edge of Valthine-controlled space. 15 human warships floated in precise formation. These were the largest and most advanced vessels Earth had ever constructed. The frantic months since first contact had driven human engineering to new heights. Alongside the human ships were 8 Valthine cruisers. These vessels belonged to the faction loyal to High Counselor Ven. Together, human and alien ships prepared to hunt those responsible for murdering thousands of innocent colonists. On the bridge of the Coalition flagship UES Defiant, Admiral Kenneth Price stood beside Commander Zelthar. Both studied the tactical display showing their target. The extremist Valthene had a hidden station deep in an asteroid field. This station served as their base of operations. Intelligence reports said the station had heavy defensive shields and numerous automated defense platforms. Zeltar explained that in a direct assault, casualties would be very high for both human and Valthene forces. The extremists had prepared their defenses well. Admiral Price said they would not attempt a direct frontal assault then. That would be foolish and wasteful. He gestured to his tactical officer to come forward. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stepped up to the display. He had been transferred from the Endeavour's survivor list and given a field promotion. He had lost friends and crewmates in the attack. His expression was professionally calm, but his eyes held the cold focus of someone with a very personal stake in this mission. Morrison addressed both commanders. He explained that the cyber warfare teams had spent weeks analyzing the intelligence Commander Zelthar provided. The extremist station used an older version of Valthene network architecture. It predated the current security protocols that the main fleet used. The human teams believed they could replicate the virus used during first contact, but this time with a more specific and devastating purpose. Zelthar asked Morrison to explain his plan in detail. Morrison said they would not just jam the station's systems temporarily, they would take complete control. Defense platforms, shield generators, weapons systems, even life support, everything. They would turn the extremist station against itself. A Valthene officer on Zelthar's staff named Kira clicked her mandibles skeptically. She pointed out that this would require physical access to the station's network hub. That hub was located deep in the station's core, behind multiple security barriers and checkpoints. Admiral Price smiled slightly. That was exactly where the boarding teams would come in. He brought up detailed ship schematics on the display. Human marine assault shuttles had been adapted with Valthene cloaking technology. Valthene engineers had been very helpful in integrating the two technologies. The plan was to go in quietly under cloak, penetrate the outer defenses without being detected, and insert mixed teams directly into the station's interior. Zelthar understood immediately. A joint boarding action. Valthene troops would handle bypassing the security barriers using their knowledge of the systems. Human troops would handle the cyber intrusion using their advanced hacking skills. Both sides would fight together to bring these murderers to justice. Admiral Price confirmed that was exactly the plan. Zelthar looked at the human admiral for a long moment. 6 months ago, he would have said humans were too aggressive and unpredictable to work with effectively. Now he found himself grateful for that very aggression. He agreed to the plan. He would coordinate with his tactical teams immediately. They would assign their best shock troops to the boarding parties. 4 hours later, 6 stealth shuttles detached from the combined fleet. They moved silently through space toward the asteroid field. Each shuttle carried a carefully balanced mixed team. 20 human marines in powered combat armor bristling with weapons, 15 Valthene shock troops in their traditional combat shells with integrated energy weapons. The shuttles crept closer, their cloaking systems hiding them from the station's sensors. Inside Shuttle Alpha, Sergeant Lisa Grant performed final equipment checks on her squad. Beside her, a Valthene warrior named Therex did the same with his troops. Lisa asked conversationally if this was Therex's first time working with humans in combat. Therex's mandibles clicked. He said it was his first time working with any species outside the Empire. He had studied human military history extensively in preparation. He said humans were very creative with violence and tactics. Lisa admitted that humans had gotten a lot of practice over the centuries. She said she had heard stories about Valthene shock troops too. Reports said they could clear entire space stations in just minutes. Therex said the Valthene were efficient in combat operations, but he said humans were different. Humans did not stop fighting even when logic said they should. He had watched historical recordings of human battles. He mentioned Stalingrad specifically. Millions of casualties, an entire city destroyed, but neither side retreated. That was not efficiency or logic. That was pure stubbornness. Lisa smiled slightly. She said humans called it determination, rather than stubbornness. But yes, humans were very stubborn, and right now that stubbornness would work in Therex's favor. Those extremists in that station had killed 4,000 human colonists. Civilians, families, children in cryosleep. The Marines were not leaving until every single murderer answered for their crimes. Therex studied the human sergeant carefully. He said quietly that was good, because his warriors felt exactly the same way. The extremists had betrayed everything the Empire claimed to believe in. The shuttle slipped through the dense asteroid field like shadows. When they reached within 100 meters of the station's hull, magnetic grapples fired silently. The shuttles locked onto the metal surface. Cutting torches activated immediately, burning through the outer plating in showers of molten metal that quickly cooled in the vacuum. Sergeant Grant counted down over the comm system. Breaching in 3, 2, 1, all teams go now. The boarding parties poured through the hull breaches simultaneously at 6 different points. They moved with practiced precision and speed. The station's automated defenses were not expecting an attack from inside their own shields. The systems took several precious seconds to recognize the threat and respond. By then, the teams were already past the outer corridors and moving rapidly toward their primary objectives. Lisa's squad encountered their first real resistance near a large equipment bay. Valian extremists armed with energy weapons opened fire from behind hastily assembled barricades. But the extremists had not prepared for human tactical doctrine. Humans believed in overwhelming firepower combined with aggressive maneuver. Lisa shouted orders to her squad, suppressing fire immediately. Her Marines unleashed a continuous storm of bullets, forcing the extremists to keep their heads down. While the enemy was pinned, 2 fire teams flanked around both sides of the corridor simultaneously. Therex and his Valian troops moved with equal efficiency and skill. Their energy weapons cut through the makeshift barricades like hot knives through soft material. Within 30 seconds of initial contact, the corridor was completely secure. Bodies of extremist fighters lay scattered. Therex observed that Lisa's squad moved very well together. Lisa returned the compliment. She said his warriors were pretty good themselves. She urged everyone to keep moving. Morrison needed them to reach the network hub in exactly 15 minutes. Deeper inside the station, Lieutenant Jake Morrison worked frantically at a hacked access terminal. His fingers flew over the alien interface. He was bypassing security locks to get his technical team closer to the core systems. Around him, human and Valian soldiers stood guard with weapons trained on all the corridors. Morrison reported over the comm that the network hub was 2 levels down from their current position. But there was a serious problem. The extremists had locked down all the main access routes when they detected the boarding action. The assault teams would have to cut through heavy bulkheads to proceed. Lisa's voice came back asking how long that would take. Morrison estimated 20 minutes with standard human equipment. Maybe 10 minutes if they used Valian plasma cutters at maximum power. Admiral Price's voice cut into the comm channel from the Defiant. He ordered them to use whatever worked fastest. All teams needed to converge on Morrison's position immediately. Sensors were detecting significant movement inside the station. The extremists knew about the boarding parties now. They were organizing a major counterattack. The next 15 minutes became absolute chaos and violence. The extremists realized they were being boarded and threw everything available at the invaders. Automated defense drones swarmed through corridors. Heavy weapons platforms were activated. Suicide attackers with explosives strapped to their bodies rushed the defensive positions. The corridors became killing fields filled with energy beams, bullets, and explosions. But the combined human and Valian teams adapted to every challenge. The humans provided suppressing fire and tactical creativity. They used grenades, breaching charges, and rapid aggressive maneuver to keep the extremists constantly off balance and unable to coordinate effectively. The Valian provided precision fire and heavy frontal assault capability. Their energy weapons cut through defenses that would have stopped human bullets completely. The 2 species complemented each other perfectly in combat.